All that glitters is not gold. Part 2. The following day, she woke up at dawn to go to the stream. This time, her grandmother didn't stop her. Along the way, she met a smartly dressed young man who was just walking. "Hi," she greeted him. "Hi, how may I help you?" "Yes, I'm looking for Prince Ojwok. I met him here a few days ago and we talked. I'm now wondering how I can find him." "Does he know where you stay?" "Yes, he visited once. Do you know him?" "I know him. Should I tell him to come to your place?" "Kindly tell him I'm Nyakio, whom he met near the stream." "Oh, Nyakio, I've heard a lot about you." She wondered where he had heard about her, but it was a story for another day. She drew water and went back home. Before putting down the pot, the prince was already there with his bodyguards. Nyakio was excited. She ushered them in, and this time they agreed to sit down. "My sons, I'm happy to see you back. Welcome." "Thank you, Grandma," they responded. "Nyakio, kindly give them something to eat." "No, thank you. We'll eat next time." I was informed that Nyakio was looking for me. "Given your situation, I decided to come as quickly as possible," said the prince. "Yes, Prince. Since you left, I've had no peace. My grandmother believes you are a gentleman and that I should not refuse your hand in marriage." "I'm glad to hear that. As I mentioned before, I'm ready to take on all responsibilities. To start, I'll bring 20 cows and then build your grandma a better house." Nyakio's grandma received the news with joy. She quickly asked the prince to set a date for the bride price. The day arrived. Nyakio prepared what she believed was a delicious meal for her visitors. The prince had also provided enough food for the day. "Nyakio, your husband-to-be is already here," Grandma called, her eyes fixed on the entrance. "I'm coming to greet them," Nyakio replied, busy behind the house. The prince, along with his 2 bodyguards, arrived with 20 cows. Food and drinks were served. Nyakio had no choice but to eat with them. The 3 men served themselves heaping portions of food, while Nyakio received only half a plate. What surprised her was that whenever they were putting food in their mouths, they would turn their faces away. Nyakio excused herself, thinking her presence might be a hindrance. As she stepped outside, they cleared the table, eating the remaining food quickly without chewing. Shocked, Nyakio stared at the table in dismay. How could this happen? She wondered. It was time to leave. Nyakio packed her belongings. Sadness ached on her face, clearly doing it to please her grandma. Grandma saw them off, waving happily. The journey was long and tiring. The prince offered to carry Nyakio on his back, while the bodyguards managed her luggage. They arrived in the middle of the night, while Nyakio was deeply asleep. The next morning, Nyakio prepared a sumptuous breakfast. The prince took his meal outside away from Nyakio. At no time did he eat in her presence. This worried Nyakio, who soon decided to stop eating altogether, considering his behavior to be bad manners. A few days later, she prepared breakfast and served her husband a gourd full of porridge. When she peeked outside, she was shocked to see the prince pouring the entire gourd of porridge into his mouth in one gulp. "How do you manage that?" she asked. "Manage what?" "Swallowing all that porridge at once." "So you've been watching me." "But you're my husband. Watching you should not be an offense." "Now that you want to know more about me, I'll show you," he said, slowly transforming from the handsome man he was into an ogre. "Oh no, you've been lying to me all along," she exclaimed, collapsing and fainting. The ogre tried to revive her. Slowly, she sat up, looking around to confirm everything was real. "Take me back to my grandma," she demanded.
"No, your grandma has enough to keep her comfortable. Forget about her. You are an ogre's wife, my wife,"
he declared. Poor Nyakio couldn't stop crying. She ceased doing house chores and spent her time weeping.
"If you don't cooperate, I'll eat you and forget it ever existed. I came as an ogre, a herdsman, and finally a prince whom you accepted. Nobody forced you."
The ogre threatened. Nyakio couldn't believe her ears. She forced herself to continue with the chores, becoming more accommodating, which confused the ogre. One morning, the ogre left at dawn to go hunting. Realizing he had gone far, Nyakio packed her belongings and began her journey back to her grandma. Despite the confusing and unfamiliar road, she pressed on. The ogre, having hunted enough, returned home with food for his beautiful wife. "My beautiful Nyakio, I'm home," he called. The house was eerily quiet. He entered, but she was nowhere to be seen. Her clothes were also missing. He quickly began searching and soon caught up with Nyakio, who had traveled many miles. She tried to escape, but he managed to grab her. She cried and kicked as the ogre tried to carry her on his shoulder. What a sad moment for Nyakio. The ogre stopped her from doing any chores, locking her in the house until he was convinced she was comfortable as his wife. He even provided a tin for her to answer nature's call. She tried to find a way to escape, but it was as difficult as squeezing water from a stone. With little left, the ogre went hunting again, locking the door from outside. Nyakio thought for a while and came up with an idea. She would dig a hole in the floor right under the door, extending it outside. She hurried, leaving all her belongings behind. Along the way, she met an old man who gave her direction. By noon, she met two ladies and a man. She explained her misfortune, and they offered to escort her to her grandma's place. The place looked deserted. Both the cows and her grandma were gone, with only her old hut standing in the middle of the homestead. "Wait!" exclaimed Nyakio. "Are you okay?" asked one lady. "No, I'm confused. I left my grandma here with 20 cows. None of them is here." They searched around the homestead but found nothing. "It must be the ogre. He must have taken them," said Nyakio. "Are you sure?" asked another lady. "I'm sure. I know his capability." "The only way to handle this is to involve the villagers," suggested another lady. They walked from house to house, urging people to come out with their machetes. People gathered in large numbers, and together they set out to confront the ogre. The journey was long, but they persevered. The ogre was busy roasting meat when the villagers entered his compound. "Come out, you foolish ogre!" shouted one villager.
"Clear this place before I kill all of you. I know you are here because of that useless Nyakio."
The ogre retorted. "We are not leaving until you give us Nyakio's grandma," they demanded.
"She's not here,"
"Where is she?"
asked Nyakio. "She knows."
The ogre replied, pulling Nyakio and throwing her into the house. The villagers moved closer with their machetes. The ogre pushed them back, stepping on some of them. They fled quickly to escape the dangerous ogre. Along the way, they met the same old man who had directed Nyakio. They narrated their story, and he offered a solution. "You see that herb? Pluck its leaves, crush them, and put them in a container with water. Pour the concoction on the ogre's body. His body will itch and develop wounds, making him weak. Then you can take Nyakio." The old man hurried to his house to bring a container, and in no time the concoction was ready. As they approached the ogre's house, they heard Nyakio screaming for help.
"Don't dare step into my house. I swear I'll kill all of you,"
growled the ogre. One villager scooped the concoction with his hands and poured it on the ogre's leg. As the ogre bent to scratch himself, another villager poured some on his back. The ogre immediately sat down, becoming restless. Nyakio jumped out of the house as the villagers demanded to know the whereabouts of her grandma. They threatened to pour more herbs on his head if he didn't reveal her location.
"I swallowed her when I heard you asking about her whereabouts,"
the ogre confessed. "Produce her, or we'll pour more herbs on your head."
"I'll vomit her out if you let Nyakio bring me a gourd full of water."
One of the villagers drew water from a pot and accompanied Nyakio to give it to the ogre. He took 2 sips and belched loudly. After the 4th sip, Nyakio's grandma was vomited out. Nyakio couldn't hide her happiness. She quickly pulled her grandma away from the exhausted ogre. The villager with the container poured the remaining herbs on the ogre's head. The ogre roared and lay on the ground. He kicked his legs and eventually fell silent. The ogre died and was buried by the villagers. Nyakio's grandma felt sorry for forcing her into marriage with the so-called prince who turned out to be an ogre. She learned that not everything that glitters is gold. They were taken in by villagers who promised to provide for their daily needs. Nyakio later married a man of her choice, and they lived happily ever after.